I'll call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order for Monday, March 10th. First budget review we have is Tewksbury School Department. Mr. Libby, you can tilt that if you'd like before you sit down. Tilt the screen, I mean.
This?
The TV set.
This way or that way, or you?
Just canter that. There we go.
Hey, that's
Thank you.
That's good. I want that as a TV set.
You're talking to the wrong person. Not enough?
Yes,
Yeah, that's all.
that way I don't gonna leak through.
Yeah, you might have to put your mic on over there, Dave.
Yeah, these are red.
Yeah, just put them on green.
Okay.
Thanks.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee. My name is Brenda Terrio-Regan, Superintendent of Tewksbury Public Schools. With me tonight is someone who probably needs no introduction, but that's David Libby, our business manager. And you may have noticed that all 5 members of our school committee are with us tonight in support of our presentation for our FY26 budget. So again, thank you for having us. Dave, if you can drive.
Sure.
I'll help you when you get up. I know that we talk about this every year, but it's important to note that it's our district strategy, which is rooted in the belief that our educational program will reflect our collective vision of a learner for all students in grades preschool through grades 12 plus. Our theory of action is how. We make those beliefs happen. We prioritize that vision of a learner so that all of our students can experience innovative, inclusive, equitable, and student-centered instruction, prioritizing academic, social, and emotional positive outcomes for all. From that strategy and theory of action, we build a district strategic goal plan with an action plan. Our respective action plan and our goals are really how we set our budget. So our budget prioritizes and supports those goals and actions. I didn't bring you all of our goals with that action plan. I didn't think you needed to see that. And if we could go to the next slide. Thank you. What we're sharing with you tonight is really what goes into the school department budget planning. It's managed by 4 major parts. What is managed by the schools are salaries, which represents 70 to 71% of our budget. Operating expenses, generally 28 to 29% of our budget, and then capital outlay, less than 1% of our budget. Other fixed costs which are managed and shared by the town are health insurance, retirement, Medicare, unemployment, and debt. Tonight, the focus of our presentation are on the major parts of the budget managed by the schools. I think it's important to note with a school department budget's a little bit like no other. It truly is a fluid process. I know we say this every year, but when we share with you our projected budget for the next school year, it really represents what we know and project at this moment in time. We know that things are constantly changing, especially growing needs. We're in the people business, right? So the growing needs of the people that we serve change annually. We receive new students unexpectedly, and what we're seeing is a trend in high needs of students. We're also seeing a trend in changing resources. The elimination of some grants, the decrease in reimbursement costs we're seeing from the state level. So our budget will most likely reflect the changes between now and final approval, or will reflect changes. I'm going to turn, that's my very brief introduction. I'm going to turn the budget presentation over to Dave Libby, our manager, to share with you the numbers that go into the school department budget.
Sure. Thank you.
Do you want me to drive?
Superintendent Regan? No, I'm fine. I can multitask.
Okay. That's why we keep you around.
A lot of this is sort of stuff we put in the presentation for the general public. It's probably a little repetitive for you. They have those already. I put those on the chairs. So, yeah, the school department, as you know, is part of the overall town budget of the town of Tewksbury. And it's recommended to you folks at the Finance Committee. And then the Finance Committee recommends the approval of the town budget at town meeting in May. And then the final actual approval of funds for the school department and all departments rests with the residents who attend town meeting. So that's something you folks, I'm sure, are already aware of, but we put this in for the general public's consumption. Where does school funding come from? We start with the budget we had the previous year, and then we've traditionally done a 60-40 split of estimated new revenues for the upcoming fiscal year. Where do we get that 60-40 split? It's sort of been the traditional way we've divvied up the expenses in town. If you've gone back a couple of years there, FY24 percentages, FY25 percentages were 59.92, 60.73. The total town was 40.9 or 39.27. It usually falls right in that 60-40 range. So we've worked out the 60-40 split of new revenues, and that's been pretty accurate over the course of time. We put in this slide to represent our student data and trends that we may be seeing over the next couple of years, and looking back just 1 year. So we have the 23-24 counts by grade and school. What we have currently, 24-25 counts by school and grade, and then we projected ahead with some assumptions into next year for 25-26. Assumes all students advance 1 grade, same enrollment at preschool, which was unknown. The presentation we sent last week had different numbers for our kindergarten enrollment. We checked with our registrar today, and these were what she set as the potential high numbers right now with using the census, and folks she has in pre-registration, the pre-registration queue for kindergarten. So it jumped quite a bit from where we were a month ago. Again, this is potential. They're not all in the door yet, but we do kind of need to plan for the highest, or just keep an eye on it. It's not something we're going to react to just yet, but it is something we need to keep an eye on if we need to react to in terms of adding a section of classes at one of our kindergarten schools.
Mr. Libby,
if the numbers hit.
could I ask a question?
Yes.
When does that window close?
Never, never. And this is the hardest number to pin down, is our early childhood numbers, because, as people move in or apartments fill with new families, there's not usually an exorbitant amount of new students, but it's the younger ones that we see. And it's all up until even the first week of school. Parents don't always know, no matter how many notices we get out there, how to register their child. And keep in mind, kindergarten, albeit that we do a full-day program for free, is not required. Some access private for a full day of extended day in school. So we really don't know. It's never really done. And we generally look at the number and hope for 10% more, but this number is large already based on census and pre-reg. So,
But say in December 10th, I come in to Tewksbury.
yeah. You have a seat at the table, no matter what.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it never
Never ends.
Never closes.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
And
That is the,
Go ahead.
sorry, that number reflects the people that are registered and intend to come?
This number represents the census numbers, those who have told the town we have children born in this year, and the pre-registrations we already have,
Okay, gotcha.
so.
And
Bit of a guess.
yeah, our registration folks have been reaching out to the census list, and they typically get a lot of return to senders, people have moved out of town.
We haven't received-
In the condos and the apartments particularly. But she has been surprised with the few numbers of return to senders she's been getting this year. So, for what that's worth. So areas of focus in formulating this year's and most years' budget. In the personnel, we always seek opportunities to maximize use of staff based on the current student population enrollment trends. Transforming the use of contracted services to employees in many areas of special needs. We heard from our special ed paraprofessionals, our educational support personnel, classroom aides, that they were interested in us moving away from a contracted service that we use for one-to-one aides. And our principals were also interested in doing that. So we're trying to phase that in over a few years, and you'll see some of our numbers reflecting that initiative over the course of next year as well. Increase the balance of special ed programming between our PK and 1 schools, and begin to implement some of the recommendations of our special education audit. We did a deep special ed audit this year, looking for some feedback from an outside agency into where we could improve our programming, and we're going to try to implement some of those recommendations over the course of next year and the year after. Operationally, we're always searching for opportunities to save in transportation, utilities, technology, with supplies and with maintenance, and trying to keep ahead of rising trends in those areas. With technology, communications is always a key for us, try to improve and consolidate our systems. We're continuing our smart board to ClearTouch conversion district-wide. That's these right here. We have some older versions of those we're trying to convert. And we have a one-to-one device program at our upper grades. We want to make sure we have adequate inventory for those students in those grade levels. Building improvements. So this year, this current fiscal year, we've transferred a lot of our capital outlay budget into our salary and operational accounts based on where our run rate was headed during this year. Unfortunately, that's something we're going to have to continue to do, it looks like, is to reduce our capital outlay budget. So it doesn't mean we're not going to take care of our buildings, but future capital projects we'll just have to fund in a different way with town meeting warrant articles through the stabilization fund, and just a little different method of funding those projects going forward for the time being. Needs of the Heathbrook and Dewing to get through 6 to 10 years. We have work going on by the Facilities Committee looking at those buildings and the long-term and short-term future, but we know nothing's happening within the near future for those buildings, so we need to provide a stable environment for the students and staff that are going to be in those buildings for a little while. And our buildings and grounds systems, HVAC, electric, plumbing, just make sure those are all adequate and running appropriately across the board in all of our buildings. So our process that we undertake to get our budget, we kind of put these slides in here this year to kind of show what we do. Our salary is typically 70% of our budget, so we start with that. And we start with our current payroll, and we advance everybody steps, lanes, and longevity per the contracts that are in place for each bargaining unit. And this was the result of that activity, the COLA, the steps, the longevity, and the total by group. You can see it was almost $2 million just to keep the same level of employees for each bargaining unit. Then we have to adjust for retirements, resignations. We typically have some savings through attrition there. We align employees that are paid from grants and revolving accounts appropriately, so that 1.9 you saw on the previous page isn't all out of our budget. A lot of that is from grants and revolving accounts. We look into our part-time, overtime, extra duty accounts versus our historical actuals to see where we have opportunities or some shortfalls, if there are any in those accounts. And then we review the whole thing with buildings, principals, department heads. You'll see that throughout our presentation, something throughout this process, we're going back and talking to the feet on the ground, the building principals and the department heads to see, get their take on anything that we see that's affecting their world and also affecting our budget. In the operating side of our budget, which is typically 28%, we adjust for known contractual increases in transportation, utilities, any service contracts we have, and service contracts can be in any area of our operation. There could be maintenance. We have contracts with roofers, plumbers, HVAC folks. We have contracts with special ed service providers for therapeutic services, occupational therapy, behavior, speech, a lot of different services that if we're not able to provide it through employees, we have to contract to be able to provide those services. But any known changes that we foresee in our service contracts, we'll make adjustments there. And then our out-of-district tuition, the Occupational Services Division recommended a 3.67 tuition increase across the board, across the state, for all out-of-district tuition placements. So that resulted in some changes, as you can see, versus FY25. We review that versus historical actuals, and we adjust for anything that we know that was odd to one particular year or will be coming up that's odd for the coming year. And again, review with principals, department heads to make sure it makes sense in the real world. We meet with the town manager, establish the amount available from the town in projected new revenues, and we share our initial needs with the town manager. And then again, back with our principals and department heads. We look for other revenue sources as well, grants, revolving accounts. These we have to be careful with, make sure they're an appropriate revenue source for the need or the use. Is the revenue going to be recurring to match the expense, if that's going to be recurring? If we can expect the expense to decrease or be eliminated over time, or is it going to increase over time? So we want to make sure we appropriately assign grants and revolving accounts to expenses if we can do so. And again, reviewing with building principals and department heads. The end of all that results in a detailed budget that we break down by cost center. We have 14 cost centers across the district. Those are either school buildings or central departments like IT or transportation, special education, things like that. And we also break it down by operating accounts and salary accounts This is a summary sheet of each of those cost centers, and you have it more in a more legible format in the separate page. But that's what we kind of are getting to when we go through that whole process. So at the end of the day, it was a 4.14% increase that we came to with when we factored in all those changes. The capital outlay decreased to $250,000 versus previous years, and a change to our health insurance that we are making actually during this year, where we're charging all of our federally funded programs, most notably food services, to a lesser extent, a couple of our federal grants, special ed grant and Title I, have employees who participate in our health insurance, and we're allowed to charge those programs for our health insurance, for the employee share of health insurance that they use. So we've done that in FY25, and we'll continue that into FY26. So we are actually, in meeting with Mr. Curran, he agreed to lower our fixed cost health insurance line, and that would allow us to increase our salary and operating areas where we were going to need some relief to cover some of those high needs expenses that we've been seeing with our students. So our 71.1% salary budget breaks down into groups this way. Teachers represent 66% of our salary budget. Of course, make up most of our group and most of our salary. That kind of makes sense. I highlighted the aides, educational support personnel. Their FTE has gone up a bit since last year. We're projecting that that trend will increase. Last year, I believe their percent of salary was around low 6, so they're up to 7.1. That's that switch from contracted educational support personnel to employee. So we'll see that, hopefully that change from contracted folks to employees happen over the next few years. Operating, 28.75% of our school budget. And the special ed services is highlighted here in red. The decrease shown is a projected decrease in those one-to-one aides that are contracted, and moving some of those folks over to the employee side. Highlighted the tuition increase in FY25. That was 30.7% of our operating budget. Next year, it looks like it's going to be about 34%. Our tuition students seem to be on the rise. And our capital outlay, just 0.42% of the school budget. What we've traditionally held in the capital outlay account was this 789,603. Fed that from FY23 to FY25 to start the year. We're proposing the 250 in FY26, which has historically been reserved for textbooks or devices, mostly devices these days. Device replacement or upgrades. We want to try to keep that preserved within that capital outlay budget. And as I said earlier, future capital projects will require funding via town meeting warrant articles from available reserves. So we keep our potential capital projects list that we kind of go to when we have funding available, and look for appropriate resources to get these projects done.
I just wanted to make note, this is not a prioritized list, just a list by school or department, and it's not a complete list. It's really probably the most desired or needed capital improvements that we have in the entire list.
Do you have a prioritized list?
We do that annually as part of our district budgeting with the principals and department heads, as well as with our school committee. And those priorities can move at any given time. I mean, I would tell you the Ryan HVAC was a priority with the change in temperatures we're seeing in schools. But right now, I wouldn't say that would be a priority over the doing PA or how do we phrase that? The intercom system at the doing. So a priority would be health and safety first. And then unexpected things happen, like we saw at the Heathbrook.
Yeah, and it sometimes depends on how we can fund the projects, like the E-rate, our E-rate project that we're trying to get done this year. The E-rate cycle ends for us next year, so if we don't take advantage of it, we would lose the opportunity to get the 50% reimbursement. So only certain projects are E-rate eligible, so those kind of
Rise to the top.
get moved to the top. Right.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So these are kind of projects we've completed in the last several years. Our list has sort of gotten shorter over the past few years. We used to be able to get more projects done during the summers. Our focus has really been on the new school for the past couple of years, getting that up and running and opened. And then 24, 25, we did a couple of, we did some HVAC, the greenhouse classroom at the Heathbrook, which was kind of jump-started with an insurance claim. And we did a lot of kitchen work, which was funded through our, we were able to fund that with our food service accounts. So grants and revolving accounts, just to touch on those, we have 49 separate funds that are currently active. All of these funds have a specific purpose and must be used appropriately. They must be used related to the purpose of the fund, or whether it's a grant or a revolving account. You know, we can't collect parking fees and buy textbooks for second graders. If we collect parking fees, we have to spend it on expenses that are related to our parking lots, whether it's maintenance or, you know, sometimes you can stretch that to utilities and things like that, but generally we try to keep it pretty related to the activity. And we fund approximately 38 positions, either partially or fully, through our grants and revolving accounts.
Do you know how many of those 38, how many are partial and how many are fully? If you don't know off the top of your head, you can get back to me.
Only about 5 are partial. So I think 3 of our grant folks are partially funded and 2 of our revolving people are partially funded. Everyone else is all in. But I'll double check that for you.
And do we know when those grants run out?
So most everyone who's in a grant is in a what we call a entitlement grant, which we get every year. So they tend to not run out. It's a special ed 240 grant that we get every year, or Title I,
Okay.
which is a reading program.
What we don't always know is the total funding for those grants. And we have 60% of our reading interventionists in the Title I grant, for example. If that goes from 350 to 150, one will have to come out, and we'll have to either not have the position or think through another way, which are limited other ways. But it really is based on our low-income and needs population in Tewksbury. So sometimes it's 2 years in the 350 range, and the next 2 years it's in the 160 range. So we're bracing ourselves until we know what they are.
Thank you.
So this is our grant funding that's available this year. We don't know our FY26 grant funding numbers exactly yet, but we assume they'll be approximately the same. The only one that we're a little unsure of is the first one in FY26 here, Title I. We received a warning letter that of a possible 170,000-ish reduction in FY26. We received that same warning last year and did not get reduced. So we're not really sure if we're going to plan to be reduced, but hope that we're not.
Yeah.
And we didn't find out until August.
Right before the step.
24.
It's
Yeah.
true. I want to draw your attention, you may have noticed just how many less lines there are as we move down. But if you look at FY24 and you see 2 lines, the bottom, well, the 2 lines up from the bottom, 21st Century Learning Grant, that represents about $175,000 that we were receiving annually for programs for our highest need students after school and all through the summer, that we only received $5,000 for this year and will not receive it again. So that was a really big cut. So every position aligned to that high needs population, we can't fund. Again, it was really meant to not, for those students to make the academic recovery and gains that they need. And it's a disappointment, but we learned that was cut this school year. So, we're crossing our fingers on every available grant dollar, but, because they're needed. So we're hoping that warning was much like last year, and it's a warning. All schools don't also qualify for the Title I grant, so we also don't know what schools may be represented in the funds that we do get. And that requires us to move positions to the schools that are designated a Title I school.
Right. Yeah, some years it's, the Center School and the Ryan School. Some years it's the Doing School and the Wynn School. So we have to show that we're supporting those schools with Title I funds. These are the other revolving accounts that we manage in the school department, aside from those grant accounts. Highlighted the school lunch account. We have a slide kind of, just because of the amount of money that's involved with that, we have a little slide explaining the food service a little more. And the circuit breaker account, same deal with that. We have 2 new funds we started this year, elementary clubs. We started charging fees and being more active in our elementary schools with clubs. And emergency assistance shelter, we got some money from the state as an emergency assistance community for some students that we had in shelters here in town. So the circuit breaker is a reimbursement program that we get for high-cost special education services to students. We basically fill out a giant spreadsheet at the end of the year and tally up the total cost for students who are gonna, who we spend more than the threshold that the state sets. It's generally around $50,000 this year. I think it's like 5150 or something like that.
52791.
There you go, 52791. So anything we spend over that, the state reimburses us for. It's supposed to be at 75% of those costs the next year. In the current year we're in right now, they only reimbursed transportation at 44%. So the total, what we heard from the state was that the total amount of claims they got exceeded the amount they had in the budget, so they cut back on the transportation reimbursement.
And transportation is what's killing us.
Yeah. It's one of the factors.
Yeah.
I think important to note is what that need looked like then from districts. And at the state level, the need is far greater in the last year, too, and moving forward than we've ever seen. And the costs have escalated far greater than we expect as well.
So this is just a quick 5-year history with our, this is what our carryover balance was for the past several years and what our net claim was. So this was what, when we added up all those over the threshold numbers and 75% of that, we were traditionally getting 2 million, 2.5 last year. This is kind of the ultimate bad news, good news. Our claim we thought was going to be 4.6 million. We're getting 4.1 million during this year back in circuit breaker funds. But the reason that number is so high is because we spent a lot in FY24. You have to spend the money in year 1 to get it back in year 2. So when you're getting a lot back in circuit breaker, it means you're spending a lot the previous year. And what we're projecting for FY26, our FY25 claim number here down at the bottom of this other column, conservatively, our file looks like it's going to be around $6 million for next year. What we've budgeted to spend out of that is 4.8 in tuitions for students for next year. So again, that's absorbing some of this high need that we're seeing with the students. We're able to absorb some of that with this program that's available from the state. In food services slide here, the revenues are increasing in food services due to the universal free breakfast and lunch programs. So we're seeing participation numbers really increase across all of our schools. We've been able to do some nice renovations in our kitchen areas, but again, this money has to be spent on food service related projects. So we are able to tap into that for our employees' health insurance, which we're starting this year, and some projects around the kitchen areas, but that's not something we can use to fix other problems in the district. So when it's all expanded in our in the Maytown meeting with our fixed costs, showing our health, retirement, and unemployment, and insurance costs. This is what will look like at town meeting, hopefully. And we noted that our health insurance is showing a $397,000 offset, with part of that being funded with with our federally funded employees. So we kind of summarized the financial steps we've taken to offset the rise in the cost of servicing the influx of these student needs. The town contribution above the typical 60% of new projected revenues was $684,000. Fully charged all federal programs for all employee benefits, $397,000. Funds, moving the funds from capital outlay into our operating and salary accounts, and projecting using quite a bit more of our circuit breaker in FY26 than FY25, $620,000. So $2.2 million we were able to piece together from these various sources to help us with these high needs that we're seeing this year. Some additional steps.
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing increased needs of our students, whether they were already in our district or whether they've just moved in most recently, which has required us to really take a deep dive, as Dave mentioned earlier, do that third-party special ed audit to really say, are our goals aligned? How can we focus and prioritize our special ed in-district services, as well as look at the type of services students are requiring out of district? We can't control those costs. So, we are adding more staff and, whether it's behavioral, BCBAs, behavior technicians, school adjustment counselors, special ed programming. We're really trying as hard as we can to service those higher needs than typical. Recovery just hasn't happened with all students. And, no one wants to hear the COVID word or the pandemic word, but the reality is for all students, there's a recovery need. For students with significant needs, it's just exponential. Behavior and different things in our schools are really impacting not only our inclusion programs, but our sub-separate and specialized programs. So we're looking at our district goals and our in-district programming to the best of our ability. Again, all these things take funding, and we are working hard to address that in district prior to students leaving. I just want to say that because, it's right at the it's on the front burner with everything we do with our principals and with our staff. How do we increase instructional sports to meet the needs in the room? And that's a daunting task, but we're up for the challenge. And thought it was important for you to know. We're not just looking at the costs going up. We're looking at what can we do to preserve and sustain what we have.
So this next slide was something our school committee inquired about. We kind of wanted to see if we kind of look back at our student population versus our instructional dollars and see if there was, anything that jumped out at us where our population wasn't really aligned with where we were spending dollars. We didn't really see anything too egregious in this area, sort of little bits and pieces here and there, but the high school program generally costs a little more to run with the cost of elective
programs, electives, more teachers. They're not a self-contained classroom, right? A student will see multiple people. Post-secondary planning for college and career readiness. Even though we've reduced several staff members at the high school, you may have seen a little bit about that last year based on enrollment. But it's still, what we see is consistently the cost percentage, regardless of the student enrollment, is staying consistent in contrast to that, if we look at the center school, as our student population percentage has gone up, the cost has stayed consistent to those enrollment percentages as well. So I'm not sure this really told us anything, but it was a good task to go through, because if we would have seen something glaring, we could address it. Thanks, Rich.
I think that's what we were looking for, if there was anything kind of glaring.
Yeah,
Can I just ask what qualifies as an instructional cost?
good question. Staff?
Or
So,
maybe what doesn't in your budget?
yeah, that's probably easier. Utilities, anything maintenance, transportation. In your package, the budget that shows by DESI line item, anything that's not in the 2000 series.
Okay.
The 2000 series is instructional, so anything in that series is in these numbers.
All right.
So next steps, we'll continue to plug on and see what our schools need and what resources we have available, and continue to tweak our budget from now right up until May town meeting. We may see some changes within these line items, from salaries to operating, or within the salaries from budget to budget, but we think the bottom line number of 78,284.88 should be sufficient. The details that you have in your packages tonight are available on our website too, at our business office page of the public schools website. And we also have summarized by DESI function code and an explanation of what those codes correlate to. Now, I'll update with today's presentation tomorrow morning. So we'll have the same data that you folks are looking at tonight on our website tomorrow. And that's it for us. If you have any questions, happy to answer them for you.
I do have a question. It's not really on the budget per se, but
Yes.
do we have a policy on AI in the classroom,
We are working.
outside the classroom?
I love that you asked that question, Mr. Asnavorian. We're ahead of the curve a little bit. We are in the process of creating an AI framework. We've been having stakeholder groups, inviting parents in, leaders in, the community, to talk with us about what AI means and what it doesn't mean. We have the goal is by the end of the school year to have policy drafted, as well as handbook, code, and an AI starting framework. We know it'll be, just a constant evolution, but we really do need to set, some boundaries, what it is. And I mean, I just attended a national superintendent conference, and it was, other than the fiscal cliff we're all ready to go over, which was probably the biggest topic of conversation, it was on how we utilize AI in schools. So, as I said, though, I'm really proud of our team for building. We put out a schedule at the last school committee meeting, and I can certainly send it to you with our plans for creating that framework.
I'd love to see it.
I know you would, and you asked that question last year. I appreciate. I was hoping you'd ask again.
Other than that, well done on the budget. I have no questions on that.
I have a question for you, but I'll email it to you. This isn't the place for it. It has to deal with the budget, but it's not for this.
So, let's see. So, look at some of my notes here. I guess I'll start with the school facility use committee. Does anything come out of that? I haven't heard it.
No definitive action at this point. I think where we're at, and I welcome town manager to jump in as well. We've done a lot of brainstorming. We've looked at the schools. Everyone has seen the schools in their present use, state. We've looked at enrollment. We've definitely bantered about several options. And the goal will be to, and the chair of that committee sitting right behind me, come up with some recommendations. I think what you'll hear, and I'm not trying to add a spoiler alert here, but we definitely know we need an assessment. We are a team, right? And we have so much information at hand, but an assessment of the facilities and the future use of them. So something that you'll be seeing at the upcoming town meeting. But so that'll probably be recommendation number one. And then what are our perhaps preferred options that we'd like, that assessment to look at?
If I can just add to that too, so the timeline or the goals of where they're going, that assessment is a tool to help you get a statement of interest letter into the MSBA so you can get back in the pipeline. It's so incredibly sluggish to get in, to go through that process now more than ever. So I wouldn't anticipate any type of financial impact, long-term financial impact to the community for another 7 to 10 years.
Right.
But if you don't get started now, it will be much longer. So people are understandably apprehensive about the financial cost, but the reality is, even if you're working at a breakneck pace, you'd be lucky to see it in 10 years.
Yeah.
So you need to keep moving along, because as Dave had referred to, you're living on borrowed time on those two older schools, and we have to keep them going, and we can, but we have to have a long-range plan, and that's what the committee's doing. So you'll see a warrant article come out of that for this spring to pay for that assessment. And I think what I'm going to do is ask for the declaration of overlay surplus to pay for that.
Right.
As far as the capital budget, which was reduced or transitioned, you talked about, using stabilization fund or whatever, warrant articles to sort of pay for anything. Will there be any warrant articles for this May meeting, or in regards to capital for school?
Right.
Yeah, we did the E-rate one to fund a wireless access points upgrade at the other 5 schools, aside from the center school, that got nice technology recently. So the other 5 schools, though, the access points were pretty close to end of life, and as was our firewall. So those 2 items were E-rate eligible and necessary so we could have wireless availability and keep those schools viable.
How much does the E-rate cover?
It varies.
Matching.
Yeah, some of the I think the firewall project is, it's funny the way they phrase it, 70% eligible and then 50% reimbursable.
Okay.
So, yeah. And then the wireless access points is 100% eligible and 50% reimbursable. So that's the biggie of the 2, the larger portion of the projects we were proposing. So I think at the end of the day, I think it comes down to about 60 to 65%. Will be, it's a matching. We fund half, and then E-rate bills the vendors directly for the other, for whatever their portion is.
All right, sounds good. You had that list for like the next 3 years or something, right? I was wondering if I know that some guys asked about priority earlier.
Yeah, I wrote that
But
down.
regardless, I'm thinking more like need. rather, aside from like, oh, we should do it now because of another reason, like the E-rate or some other grant that's eligible during this window, that would make sense to bump it up. But excluding that, what would the sort of priority based, on need? You don't have to do that right this second, but if you, or even.
Yeah, and again, it's hard to say too, because, what's the long-term future of the Heathbrook and the Doing School? Do we want to invest any money beyond what we've already done, or what we really have to do to keep those places kind of just afloat, for the next several years?
Yeah, I can see where that would.
I think the city of Lowell has helped us a lot in understanding what it's like to throw good money after bad when it comes to building schools. And you see the new Lowell High and the exorbitant amount, and I don't want to be in that situation, keeping the doing, which I love. My daughter went there, but she's
Yeah.
old and she's tired. She just wants to retire.
The other part of that is that on that list, do you have like any kind of rough estimates on what it would cost for each of those, or?
We do have, we got a price on the Ryan HVAC when we put that out to bid a couple of years ago, and then that was going to be funded with ESSER funds, but we didn't have enough in the ESSER till to do that. So we kind of tabled that. In talking with Mr. Montori at the time, we thought maybe we'd table it for a few years, see if we weren't sure what was driving the high cost of the project, if it was, tied to the supply chain issues that we're seeing. It was right after COVID. And a lot of people were doing HVAC projects. We were thinking maybe if we waited out a little bit, prices would come down. And that's not really what we're seeing. So, but we do have a few things priced out. We could add that to our list too. If,
In my
like us
head,
to-
when I was looked at it, I was like, geez, it would be nice to see like, is this a high priority, low,
Yeah.
medium, whatever, just something rough with a rough estimate, just to give it some
Right.
more context or whatever.
Sure.
I think we listed them as a 1, 2, 3 before. I'm not sure if that list is succinct as it was in August, but I wrote it down to
Yeah,
to
and
look
then
at.
obviously, when things come up, like you might have an opportunity, it's like, well, this is a low priority, but we have such an opportunity now, let's just do it.
Right.
Type of thing. So, anyway, that was just a comment. Also, I had one of the items was a high school first floor issue. What's that mean?
So the floor at the high school is cracking in a whole bunch of spots. It almost looks like the building's sinking around these, around beams and
Footings,
the
if you will,
footings. And I don't know what hallway that is. Is that?
It's the main hallway, and if you are at the high school and you go down, you'll notice in the cap, many of expansion joints were cut in later in the project, right? So you'll see the tile cut. And if you go to the round room, LGI 1, and you take a right, you go down that hall, you'll see the, corners of those footings with, sitting on them are the big columns, concrete columns. You'll see the floor has broken and sunk a good this much at every one, all the way down the hall, as well as then a crack between the points of each of those footings across the entire hall. And we've seen that all on the first level. So something that, because it's sheet linoleum, the linoleum's not repairable unless you cut out a piece and do that, but it will crack again. So if you're at the high school, you'll notice that hall. So if you walk down the main hall on the first floor, that's something you'll see.
Huh.
Yeah, we had one of our in-house doctor town architects in, and they gave us I think it was $11,000 to do a study on it and recommended fix. So we're pursuing that to find out.
Originally it was somewhat inconclusive, whether that was rising or if things were falling, and there wasn't, no real conclusion as to what was causing it early on after we opened.
Yeah.
You know what kind of fix or price tag that is?
No, that's why we want to get the study done
All right.
on what they recommend and an estimated cost to fix it.
It'd be better to know why, too.
Wow.
Yeah. And is it going to keep happening?
Another question I had on, you were moving some staff from the consulting, I think, contracted, I guess, for the special ed to staff. Is there a cost savings to doing that? I'm guessing, I'll let you answer that.
That's a yes and no.
Yeah, we want to, at the same time, kind of reduce the number. We've told everyone it can't be a one-for-one trade. It's sort of a two-for-one. We're trying to reduce take away 2 contracted folks and replace them with 1 employee. Then we can justify from a cost perspective, but there's a lot of moving parts to making that happen. So that's why we're trying to kind of take our time with it and do it over the course of 3 years.
Okay, gotcha. And I had a question that, the Title I, you said you were being conservative and just expecting to not have that at 170, right?
Yeah.
How does that mean we lose a person because of that?
Most likely.
Yeah.
And again, it depends on where the Title I, what schools will meet the criteria for Title I services.
Okay. That's all I have for now. Thanks. Thanks, Rich.
You're welcome. I have a couple of questions. And building report card.
Yeah.
Didn't see it. Did I miss it?
No. I gotta,
We get that last year?
yeah, I'll get that to you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Because that aligns with my next discussion around.
And we updated it for the facilities committee too, John and I. So,
The
I missed putting it in, sorry.
the excess capacity we have at whatever school, because I haven't been in the school system. I know we get the long-term studies committees that says we're going to do X, we can't get anything built for at least 10 years. I'm looking at lower hanging fruit. What can we do right now with that excess capacity in buildings that we have that would have an impact on the failing, the buildings that are failing, doing?
Yeah.
Heathbrook, I'm sorry, not Heathbrook. Yeah, Heathbrook, doing,
Yeah, that's kind of the work that
Committee's looking at that,
committee's
too.
doing.
Yeah.
but in my mind, it needs to be shorter term. If you're saying we're not going to get anything out of it for 10 years, that excess capacity is going to sit there. It's going to fluctuate over time versus number of students, but there must be things we can do with it.
So it's a little bit messy and complex, because it would be so easy if we could move a whole grade level, let's say, a whole grade or band, but it's not that, the space isn't there for as easy to do just that. And that's what we've studied. The school's use is different than just boxes of classrooms. As I said, we have more special ed services, we have more DLCs, developmental learning centers, we have more school adjustment counselor need. There's just a lot of different needs in the schools than there were in just classroom boxes, small boxes. We call them big boxes and little boxes. And how many of the big ones do we need, and how many of the little ones do we need? So we're studying that, and I wish I could tell you that it was as easy as just moving a whole grade. There's other impacts to that. There's certainly other facets to doing that. But that is really probably the lion's share of the work of this committee is, can we do that? And what would it require us to do if we wanted to do that? And that's where some of the building assessment needs to take place. Because if we wanted to do that, how many more little boxes and big boxes do we need? How many more staff do we need? What would transportation and traffic, and like, there's just a lot of those unintended probably things that we're not thinking of that, obviously the community would expect us to have those answers in place before making such a move like that. So I can tell you that is the work. And when the options go out for the assessment study, it will be from the committee's perspective the best options that may exist.
Okay, and another line of questioning is around these special ed needs.
Yeah.
Could we how do we pull back some of the outside of district
Yeah.
stuff back into our district, so we're not
Sure.
using so much money?
I'd love to talk, that is the discussion. It's an investment that we would need to make in more programs in our schools. We started that process at our earliest childhood levels. There's no doubt that school districts across the state are facing this perfect storm, if you will, not enough funding and a lot more need. And that our neediest students, and I say this, with a big heart, whether they were born here or move here tomorrow, we are required to give them free and appropriate public education. And if they come to us, let's just say with the residential placement of $500,000 a year, and I say that because it happens, we're obligated to give them that program. Now, we can't replace all of those in our building, but what can we put in? And we're looking at that. We have some really creative approaches, but again, it'll be an investment in more big boxes and little boxes of rooms with more staff. And then if we can try to provide those services as we're trying at the earliest childhood level, we hope they don't ever move out. But the reality is, many will. We don't have an exorbitant, our special ed audit actually revealed, we don't have an exorbitant number of students in out-of-district placement. The cost is exorbitant. The transportation is exorbitant. And it's not just the van or the bus, it's with a nurse or with another service. And then the cost of those service providers in our building has escalated. So this is a very big conversation. And as I said, the reimbursements and other available funds are decreasing while those costs are significantly increasing. It's become something that we know we need to talk with our state legislators about in greater detail, because it's not just Massachusetts, it's everywhere. I don't think Chapter 70 is keeping pace with inflation. I certainly know the circuit breaker, as we shared with you, we were surprised with that decrease, and yet we had to pay the bill. So I think you're right on. There's both. How do we meet the needs of our students in the building and out of the building and be able to pay for it?
And we saw a terrific presentation in December from both of our staffs at the Heathbrook and the Dewing School, of our preschool staffs, that proposed change to our preschool programming for next year, which would start us down the road to have more options for kids to start their careers in district in some. Is it a therapeutic learning center?
So like I mentioned DLC, Developmental Learning Center. There's also what we call a TLC. Maybe you have or haven't, heard any rumblings of the severe behavior needs of many students. So, when we can transition students out of whether a DLC or an inclusion class for periods of time versus all day, and then try to build on those skills with those students, that's better. But building those programs, as I said, is staffing, and and space. So that's why I say I'm apprehensive. The boxes just aren't all there, and definitely the people doing that work aren't all there.
But the bigger box, like, and again, this is my complete ignorance
Yeah.
of the educational system. The special needs, do we have special needs students who are in the same classroom all day long?
Some. I think, are you referring to like a sub-separate, in a smaller group setting all day long?
Yes.
Some, but the goal is for that to transition into inclusion. Unfortunately, that works for some. It doesn't always work right away for all, but that's our constant goal in the program that we provide for students. All students are general ed students. Some need special ed services, and some need a lot more than others. So that's our mantra, and that's our ongoing goal, and that's probably the biggest lift in our district goals and action plan right now, is how we really do that with the high needs of students we have.
If you had a guess, how many students we're talking about who are in one classroom all day long?
Percentage?
50 students?
I'd have to get back to you on that. I mean, I could probably roll off the numbers, but rather than you wait for me. Yeah, our learning centers, even our most severe needs that may have 9 to 12 students in that class throughout the day, this is where we need our aides, our ESPs, throughout the day, pocket of 2 or 3 may be going to science while the others are staying put for their, significant English language arts needs. Some of them are going to 5th grade and some of them are going to 6th, or at the WIN, some are going to 7th, some are going to 8th. So it's a very fluid, and it's based on the availability of the students' capacity and the availability of the staff for those inclusion settings. But we try to do that all day long. Our most severe needs, we get into gen ed classrooms at least some portion of the day, even if it's for learning the social skills and that piece, or some of the unified arts programming, where all students have some access to that. So I probably didn't answer you. I'll give myself a little checkbox to tell you how. I don't know if I can give you a firm number on how many never go into the general population. It will be very few.
Okay. Just an unrelated question on textbooks.
Sure.
So does the high school use textbooks at all?
Yes.
Okay. Any idea what percentage is textbook versus what's online?
No. I don't really have that percentage. But when we buy our textbook programs now, for example, we purchased a new ELA program for kindergarten through grade 6. And we're in our second year of using it. That was about $750,000. Most of it is paying for the online component. Very little is, stuff in the hands. So with textbook purchases, most of it comes with the online student
online.
subscription per year. Yeah.
The CDs, you have to buy the CD.
It's all on the web now.
Okay, so another unrelated question, you're talking about funds we get having to be used on a specific line item, like parking fees. Can parking fees be used to pay staff that bring children onto the buses?
Like a bus monitor.
Bus monitor, or,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they have to
Yeah.
watch the kids getting loaded onto the bus. I'm assuming the
Yes.
person who does that gets a stipend?
We fund some of our our security officer's salary out of parking fees.
Security monitors.
Security,
I don't want to confuse it with the
right, security
SRO.
monitors
Security monitors.
at the high school, because they monitor the parking lot during the day. They go out and check, down
But the parking fees,
Drumfield.
parking fees can't be used, the parking fees at the high school can't be used to uh, put the kids on the bus doing at the end of the day?
No.
Yeah, I mean, it'd just
Be a
be,
different
you know,
school.
you would take it out of that fund,
Yeah.
use it over here. We do use, the high school's the only place where there's parking fees, so those are the high school security monitors that it partially funds. The fees don't fully fund them.
Have we looked at sports fees?
We are, it's, again, it's as if you're pulling these right out of my head, Mr. Lavasa. We are doing a analysis of our fees, sports and clubs, and our neighboring communities. And I think April, Mr. Libby and Mr. Druin, our athletic director, will be doing a presentation to the school committee and making a recommendation
On a to-do
on
list.
where we go with those fees.
On where we go with the next fiscal, September school?
Correct. Keep in mind, we have no bus fee, so that will be an easy analysis. Ours is 0, and others are quite high. But if our athletic or club fees are much lower, or where they stand in relation to our neighbors, we need to look at that too.
Because I know parents, some parents used to drop their kids off and pick their kids up at school. That's a seat on a bus.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's hard to, I give you credit, it's hard to figure out, because if, you gotta have a seat for them on the bus.
Yes.
Because you have to provide transportation, but they're not using it. What do we do?
Well, we overbook a little bit, like the airlines. We know we're not going to get everybody, so we overbook the buses a little bit at the beginning of the year, and then we
We're
adjust.
putting it,
Yeah,
I think a standby to 50.
yeah. We do have some better data. Elementary schools, they have an app that they use that lets us know who takes the bus home every day. It's a pretty good indicator of if they use the bus at all. So we've kind of morphed that into a projection for the next year of who's going to be riding. So like we were able to combine the Ryan School and the Center School times this year and run the buses a little more efficiently than when they were on a different time schedule. We were worried about numbers when the schools were built, but when we did some analysis of who actually rode the bus versus if everybody rode the bus, we knew we were going to be able to fit them on the fleet that we had.
Okay.
We reduced the fleet by 1,
And we did,
which was a little bit of a savings,
yeah.
and definitely reconfigured the fleet to be more efficient too.
The first 3 weeks, I asked the parents to be very flexible when it comes to buses and timing as they go
We
through their
did.
analysis and figure out where they're going. My daughter came a little later and ruined my schedule a little bit, but I'm very flexible. Thank you.
We thank you for your
Well,
flexibility.
thank you. You're welcome. You're very welcome.
And your
for it.
daughter's flexibility as
Thank
well.
you.
Yeah, just a general comment of throwing Band-Aid on Band-Aid on Band-Aid on Band-Aid is just, we gotta get away from that. I mean, we could, I see your capital improvement plans, we're not doing as much as we want to.
Yeah.
The town supplemented 600 odd thousand. What's gonna happen next year? Just a thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would be remiss of me if I didn't say, throw some bouquets at our maintenance department. Where they can save money, they do. When they're crawling under the doing school, and I mean under it, and over rocks and fixing, pipes that are exposed, that they do. So, they're saving the pennies and nickels wherever they can and keeping those systems, flowing.
Okay. Anybody else? We all set? Thank you very much for your time and your presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
it's like blowing up, and I can't do anything.
Really?
Literally, and I try to turn it off, but then it's all going up. I can't. It's right. So my daughter fixed it for me once.
Yeah.
She should have showed me how. Because she's like, give me that. And she's fixed it. And I'm like, I don't know what I did to get a mistake. I can't do anything.
Poor guy. Can't shut it off.
No. I gotta Google.
If you shut it off.
Well, yeah, you do this, but then you're supposed to.
Well, no, you're holding it both sides.
Like, that's a thing.
Oh, you think? Hold it on both sides.
Yeah, the kids see that.
I was gonna let you get out of the way.
I can't. Yeah, it's all blown up like 1,000% or something. I can't.
You poor guy.
Until I get home.
What if I were to send you a text?
I bet I couldn't do anything, but I mean, it's not really critical.
Go ahead, let me just see if I try to text.
I don't know how.
Okay, so welcome, Shashi Tech.
Thank you. Thank you. Just give me 1 second here to,
I do apologize for my phone going off.
That's okay.
'Cause I had turned it off at church. I have no idea why.
Happens to all of us.
Nothing. That is weird. I should get something. No, I'll figure it out.
You won't figure it out. You do
I
it.
won't. But she's in Spain.
You have to Google.
My son, to get he's closed. Is this the same thing as this?
I think so.
I got multiple copies.
Well, this one.
yeah, I had received an email asking me to bring 5 or 6 copies with me, so.
No.
Oh, that's what you need. Saying he was bringing copies.
This is easier to read.
See, this one's easy to read.
We can have that one. Yeah. Do we have it on there? It's very weird.
Okay. I think we're ready, guys.
Are you ready?
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share some highlights of the FY26 Shawshene Valley Technical High School budget with you. My name's Tony McIntosh. I'm the Superintendent Director at Shawshene Valley Technical High School. I'm joined by Ms. Patricia Muse and Mr. Bob Hutchins, who are the Tewksbury representatives to our school committee here presenting tonight. The Shawshene Valley Regional Vocational Technical School District Committee held a public hearing for the FY26 budget on February 25th, 2025, and voted unanimously to approve the shared budget. The FY26 budget incorporates a number of funding sources, including the use of excess and deficiency funds, transportation revolving funds, grant funding, and program-specific revolving funds. While we have offset the costs in the budget using a combination of approaches, we are proud to bring forward a budget with an overall increase of $1,131,216 over our FY25 budget. Excuse me. A lot has happened at Shawshene Valley Technical High School since the last time we presented before this committee. In the spring of 2024, we established a salary scale for all of our administrators and established pay ranges for all of our non-union employees. This created predictability in our salary budgeting and addressed a longstanding concern among these employees. In January of 2025, the district settled 3 collective bargaining agreements with the units represented by the Shawshene Teachers Association, or the STA. These 3-year agreements are in place for our teachers, paraprofessionals, education technology staff, and maintenance staff. Our FY26 budget includes these updated salaries, as well as salaries for all administrative and non-union employees. We currently have 2 outstanding contracts that need to be settled, our clerical and cafeteria groups. We have budgeted for the anticipated raises for these groups, but we'll need to wait until these contracts are updated to finalize those numbers. On December 13, 2024, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, MSBA, invited Shawshene Valley Technical High School into the eligibility period. We will begin to complete Module 1 eligibility period beginning on August 1st, 2025, and completing this phase of the approval process on or before April 28th, 2026. We're excited about the opportunity that this process could potentially provide for our school, but we're also keenly aware of the impact that this project could have on all of our sending communities. We've made adjustments to the FY26 budget that focused on us postponing some of the facilities and infrastructure capital projects until we have a better understanding of the scope and cost of the potential MSBA project. The FY26 budget also includes a transfer from our excess and deficiency fund into the newly established stabilization fund. Our sending communities voted to establish the stabilization fund during last year's town meetings, and this will mark the first time that we've requested to transfer funds into this account. As you review the budget that we have shared, please keep in mind that this budget request includes all of the costs associated with operating our school. We do not ask for additional warrant articles to fund capital projects or upgrades, and all of that is included in the increase we are presenting. We do not cost share building maintenance with our sending communities or participate in town-level health insurance funds. All of these costs are also budgeted into the FY26 document that was shared. I would also like to point out that the required minimum contributions to the regional district for all 5 of our sending communities was increased under the FY26 Chapter 70 funding formula. This equates to an additional $434,737 that our communities are required to fund based on the Commonwealth of Massachusetts budget calculations. This is entirely outside of the control of Shawshene Valley Technical High School, and we've worked diligently to keep our overall budget increase down by utilizing all of the resources available to us. Thank you. I have the presentation electronically. It is essentially the same thing that's in the budget book. Would you like me to go through it? Preference to look at the documents that you have? I'm flexible.
I'd like to see it on the,
On the monitor? Sure. Okay. So again, there's an introductory letter here. It hits on a lot of the same highlights that I already talked about. Again, we're working to address capital expenditures that are reality in a school building that's over 50 years old. And we sat here and heard some of the conversations about Tewksbury's elementary schools, and I'm sure you're well versed in those concerns. Our FY26 budget process started back in November. We've had numerous meetings with our capital facilities planning subcommittee, with our budget subcommittee. I've had meetings with the town managers throughout this process to keep them informed about where we're headed and what we're prioritizing for the upcoming year. And you can see this ended on February 25th with our public hearing and our school committee voting to move this budget forward to our 5 sending communities. Budget distribution, instruction, again, just as we saw with Tewksbury, it's going to amount to about 72% of our budget next year. Fixed costs are 25%, debt service is 1%, and our capital projects is about 2% of our operating budget for next year. Capital, we actually do our capital budget process separate and then kind of merge them together with our operating budget at the end. So we are assessing the communities $1,145,942. We plan to use $237,500 from excess and deficiency to offset those costs. We're anticipating about $130,000 in Perkins grant funding. That's the federal vocational funding that comes from Washington. And then we're also going to utilize just over $75,000 from revolving accounts to pay for some specific items, again, that align with the programs that have requested them. Just, again, some historical numbers here. For FY26, we received $2,362,025 in initial requests for our capital budget. We reduced that down to $1,588,743, and then when we back out revolving grants in E&D, we're coming forward with a total assessed value of $1,145,942. And again, in a vocational school, capital requests are equipment purchases for our technical programs. This is payment on debt for the athletic fields that were constructed 8 or 9 years ago now. So again, all of that stuff is included in this capital project. Assessment detail by towns. And again, we include all 5 of our sending communities in here. And again, this is a breakdown as to how we get that. So there's a capital contribution, there's the minimum contribution set by the state, there's an assessment there for our operating agreement based on our regional agreement or our charter that was established back in the 60s, which gives you the total assessment per community. Transportation aid is in there. Like I said, we plan on using some excess and deficiency money. We're anticipating getting $6,899,223 in Chapter 70 aid. And again, so that next to the last line item there is really a pass-through. So in order for us to transfer money into that stabilization fund, it has to be part of our budget that we present to the towns. So essentially, we'll put $750,000 into the budget, and then that $750,000 will be transferred right into the stabilization fund. So it's kind of a net zero. Current enrollment, you can see our total enrollment is down a little bit from last year. I will say we have a really small sophomore and junior class compared to historically what we've had in the building. Freshman class is going strong. It's about 350 kids at this point in time, and we're looking at having an incoming freshman class in the fall about the same size. So we're hoping that this is a 1 or 2 year trend, and as those groups move out, our enrollment numbers will go back up. Again, Tewksbury's numbers, they're less than they were in FY25, but they're more than they were in FY24.
Mr. McIntosh,
Yep.
if I could just interrupt.
Sure.
Can you go back to the prior slide and now?
This one?
Yes.
And also, you might want to push the mic away.
Oh, is it
little bit.
making a,
They-
okay.
They,
Making noise.
they can definitely pick up your
Is that better?
voice, yeah.
Okay.
So the assessment there's certainly other factors based on number of students, right?
Yep.
Could you just briefly describe what those factors are?
You mean how the whole Chapter 70 is calculated, or just the individual's community's contributions?
Individual communities' contribution. If it's a short story.
I'll try to make it as short as I can. So essentially, we ask for 3 contributions. We ask for capital contribution, which again is based, every community contributes at least 10%. So we have a couple of communities that don't always hit that 10%, but like Bedford and Burlington are charged 10% regardless of whether they have that number of students enrolled or not. And then what we do is we divide up the balance based on the number of students in the other 3 communities. So sometimes that gets supplemented isn't the right word, but it gets offset by some of our smaller communities, and it lowers those costs. The minimum contribution is what's established by the Department of Ed, and those are the numbers that they put out for every single school, municipality, town across the state. So they tell us based on your municipal growth index, your property taxes, your income, all of those things. This is what the state says that our sending communities can afford to pay. And then the third one is the operating agreement. So in our regional agreement, it spells out how capital is allocated, and then it says that the additional operating costs for the district will be spread out based solely on student enrollment. So the more students that you send, the more that number goes up. The less students you send, the lower that number gets.
So you said Billerica and Burlington are 10?
It's usually Bedford and Burlington.
Bedford.
Yep,
Bedford and Burlington. They're 10%,
at least.
at least.
Yeah.
Are they 10% this year?
That might be a future slide, but if it's not, I will find that out for you.
Okay.
Yep. Are we okay to move forward?
Yes.
I would say they are, because it's exactly the same number.
Is it? Okay. We talked about October 1st enrollment. So required minimum contributions, again, state determines what they feel is the town's ability to pay for education. This number is one that can be impacted significantly by a decrease in the population of Tewksbury Public Schools. So we are one part of that formula. The total population in Tewksbury is another part of that formula. If the enrollment in Tewksbury Public Schools goes down, even if ours stays the same or decreases a little bit, we end up getting more of that minimum contribution allocated to us. And again, that's just the way that the state runs that funding formula. So that it does make for some crazy swings in there sometimes that you don't expect. I didn't see them this year, but that doesn't mean that. Again, assessment comparison between the 2 towns. Our total increase of what we're asking for, and again, is 2.91 overall. But when you look at these numbers, because the state changed the Chapter 70 minimum contributions for each one of our communities, The only one that even comes in close to that is Wilmington. Everybody else, because of that additional, the additional funds that have been charged back to the towns, if you will, even though our budget only went up 2.91%, the increases over last year's assessments are up for all of our communities. And you can see Bedford was the one, for whatever reason, they had a huge jump in their Chapter 70 percentage that they were required to pay this year for some reason. Again, this breaks it down, capital assessment and operating from the regional agreement. It goes down by communities. And to Patty's point, I would guess that both Bedford and Burlington were charged 10% just based on the number. I think it would be pretty low odds that they both come out with $114,594 otherwise.
Well, actually, you just look at it.
So again, we tried to control the things that we could in our budget, and this was part of the conversation I had with the town manager. Our target was 3%. We actually were able to come in a little bit underneath that. Again, using some different funding sources and offsetting some things in different ways than we've done in the past. And again, we understood that with the changes in the Chapter 70 formula, the towns were already going to be asked to kind of pick up a little bit extra, so we were trying to be super sensitive about that and make sure that what we brought forward was as responsible as we could be. Again, comparisons here, you can see our capital requests are down significantly over last year. The operating assessment is up a little bit. Required minimum contributions is up. Chapter 78 is up, and I don't know how many of you follow that process. The governor proposed $75 per student increase. If you've watched this process over the past few years, you know sometimes the legislature comes back with a number that's a little higher or a little bit lower, so there's always a little horse trading that goes on before the budget gets finalized. But again, for planning purposes, we're using the governor's numbers that were released. I forget the exact date, but it was the last week in January, excuse me. Again, just a graph here of funding sources based on the last 5 years. State aid history, again, just like you heard from Tewksbury, that really hasn't kept pace with a lot of the things that are going on in the world. We're not really much different than they are. I mean, we obviously run different programs, we do different things, but our funding comes from the same sources, and it's rationed to us in the same ways. And again, there's slides here for each one of our sending communities if you want to look at cost, at enrollment versus assessment histories. I believe this goes back 10 years. Tewksbury is in here as well. Our capital budget, there is a summary page, it's page 22 in the book that you had. This lays out our request for FY26, but it also projects 27, 28, 29, and FY30. And again, we typically spend the most time and put the most energy into the FY26 budget. When 27 comes up, we'll have those conversations about, is this now a priority? Is this something we can push to a following year? Is there grant funding available for this? Is there some other way that we can potentially pay for that? So especially as you get into like FY28, there's a big number there. But again, some of those things can move around based on what we have available for funding and how we decide to attack those purchases. And then the following pages break it down. So FY26 capital budget. You can see we're using revolving funds for automotive, for the CAF, for graphic communications, and for our health assisting program. Like I said, we anticipate about $130,000 in Perkins, so we'll use that towards some equipment purchases. And then the committee made the decision to use E&D funds to complete the field house, the final phase of the field house there, which will include expanded bathrooms, some other things that are a little overdue that we wanted to finish up. Again, as you go through each year, it's spelled out here. There's FY27, FY28, FY29, FY30. There's some things in here, I'm going to be completely honest with you, that will probably never see the light of day. We have some programs that are asking for program expansions. We live in a 55 5-year-old building that doesn't have sprinklers. The realities of trying to do expansions is not going to happen. So again, some of this stuff will come out as we go through this process, but we'll probably backfill it with other things as we move through that process. Subtotals by department on page 28. And again, we not only do we provide the percentage increase, but we also provided the actual dollar difference. As we were going through this, some things looked like they were wild swings, but when we looked at them, they really were only a couple of $1,000s here or there. It continues on to page 29. And then we get into the FY26 operating budget. So we break our budget out by different departments. It's alphabetical as you go through this. You can see there's a comparison between FY25 and FY26. I know, I believe in one spot in here, the FTE equivalent for paras isn't listed for 26. It goes up by 2. We added 2 positions to this budget. One is a para, a security / lifeguard. We do have a pool. I think most of the sending communities know that. A lot of the sending communities utilize them. During the school day, we have specific ratios that we have to keep between staff members and students in the pool. So now we typically use the pool with juniors and seniors, which are smaller gym classes, and we can make that work with the staffing we have. In order for us to expand that programming and get back to where we were pre-COVID, we got to bring in somebody that has a lifeguard certification. So we're looking at, we don't really have a full day role for them, but we're hoping to find somebody that is willing to take a little bit of a hybrid position and get the lifeguard certification, and then also be out around the building and checking bathrooms and monitoring students and walking through the parking lot and doing all those other things. So those are the 2 positions that were added. Again, we run different programs than traditional high schools. So as you look at, a lot of the costs in this, the students in our plumbing program are cutting and soldering copper pipe. They're threading steel pipe. The students in our metal fab program are cutting up flat stock and sheet steel and using welding electrodes. And so all of those things add up. And it's definitely an expensive school to run, but it's, we try to support business and industry as best we can. We try to support our sending communities as best we can, and it's an investment in the local workforce. And again, that goes on for a number of pages here. And then we actually get into, we provided all of the salary projections for all of our employees starting on page 39. That goes on for a number of pages. And then when you get to page 46, again, these are the Chapter 70 numbers that the state shared. The first one shows the increase. It shows the numbers for enrollment, foundation budget, required minimum contributions, Chapter 70 aid. You go to the second one. This is the worksheet, if you will, that the state uses to calculate how they come up with those minimum required contributions. Vocational students have their own column. We get some money for special ed in district. We get some money for English language learners. We get some money for low-income students. And then the next slide, slide 48, shows the breakdown by community as to what the foundation enrollment is, and then what the required minimum contributions are. And that's where I pulled that $434,737. So if our budget didn't go up $1, it would have cost our 5 sending communities about $435,000 more to run Shawshene this year than it did in FY25. And again, we've included the stuff for all the other towns in there. If you're interested in seeing how Tewksbury stacks up to any of our other 4 sending communities, those are the next few pages here in this document. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Questions? I'll start with one. What are Middlesex County charges?
So all of our non-teachers, non-administrators, non-DESE licensed people belong to the Middlesex County Retirement Board. So clerical staff, cafeteria, education technology, maintenance, all of them are, those are our payments to the Middlesex Retirement Board.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Same question I posed to the superintendent of the public schools. What's your AI guidance and policy?
We don't have one yet. We are working on it. We've reached out to MASC, and we're kind of waiting from them to see what kind of guidance they were going to provide and which direction they were recommending for schools to go into. Our technology director, my director of academic programs, and my principal have been involved in some trainings, panels, whatever term you want to use. So they're kind of the three that have taken the lead on this within our building. So again, we hope to have something in place. It probably won't be before summer, but maybe early next fall to address
No,
those things.
I didn't expect you to honestly have it. Actually, I was a little surprised that our superintendent was as far along as they were. I know it's something
Yeah.
that, I just want to make sure people are considering
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. What was that kid's name? Gone. Oh, yeah. So and Ms. Muse just reminded me, we are very proud. We have our very first student that's been accepted to the U.S. Naval Academy, Elliot Hong, this year. So that's something we plan on celebrating, I believe, at our next school committee meeting is to have him and his parents.
wonderful.
So that's another milestone for us, so.
And the only other question I have is, I kind of ask it every year just to see any trends. What's kind of like going out and what's new coming in?
From program areas?
Yeah, I mean, you look at things like cosmetology.
Yep.
Is that growing, a growth area, or is that something that's kind of trending away and something new is coming in, like culinary?
I think Cosmo has been pretty steady. I will say that the highest.
It can be anything, I
Yeah.
just use those as.
The highest demand that we see is typically on building trades, especially plumbing, electrical, carpentry, HVAC are probably close behind that, masonry, and then automotive. Those, are typically all kind of jockeying for, first place, second place.
Those tend to be your strength
Those-
points,
Yeah, and then I would also point towards, again, our female population tend to gravitate towards medical assisting, dental assisting, or health assisting. Those, again, seem to be probably our biggest draw. I think Cosmo's been pretty steady. I wouldn't say it's declining.
Well, I just didn't know if there was anything that was kind of like, hey, this is kind of on our radar because we see such declining enrollment in this.
I don't think there's nothing
No,
we've
we haven't
talked about
had
as
that
a
in a long
committee.
time.
Yeah.
Okay,
Last one I remember is diesel.
Yeah,
We took diesel out.
that was a while ago. Yeah.
actually,
Bad move. It
I
was a
remember
bad
that conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Jason? Well, he's thinking, on plumbing, you talked about copper. I've seen houses being built, no copper.
Yep.
Do you teach that too, right?
We do, yeah. We do PEX, we do ProPress, we try to cover all of those technologies. And I'm going to be honest, we reuse as much of that. So we'll start with a project that's this big and have the kids cut pieces out of it, and then the next project they make is this big, and then the next project they make is this big, down to the point where we're using stubs for ninth grade exploratory that otherwise would end up in the trash because it's more cost effective, and we couldn't do it if we didn't.
On the student placements for their, do you have a guesstimate as to what percentage of the students get their number one shop choice?
So last year, it was around 94%. We also had a smaller freshman class last year, so it kind of trends. The more kids we have, the lower that percentage goes. And again, just because we have 6 or 8 or 9 shops that are really popular, it tends to push kids into maybe their second or third choice instead of their primary one. But yeah, we were right around 94% last year. Yeah.
And do you pick up sophomores?
Yep. Yeah, so we had a whole campaign we did a whole social media campaign last summer, which was essentially like, here's the, I forget how many it was, these are the 6 or 8 programs that we have openings in. You know, if you have a student that's interested in transferring in as a 10th grader, you know, and you're interested in one of these programs, I think we brought in about 10 or 12 kids. We didn't get a huge response, but we're also transitioning some personnel last summer too, so we're hoping this year to get out in front of that earlier and to get the message out earlier, and with some continuity in personnel, hopefully we'll have a little bit better results.
Okay. Do you charge sports fees?
We do not.
Do you charge bus fees?
We do not. The only fee that we do an insurance fee for technology. First, I want to say it's, is it that high? I was thinking it was $65 a year. And essentially, you know, if the kid breaks the screen on the laptop, or they bust keys, or, you know, there's some type of accidental damage to it, it'll cover that. It doesn't cover a kid using it as a hammer or a frisbee or something like that. But those are really the only fees that we charge students.
All right, that's all I have.
I do want to make a statement. When you asked about, do our kids use the new technology? Well, you asked about plumbing, you know, do they use other than, or what the trades are doing? And we have advisory committee. We have advisors for all of our trades, and they work in the field. So they meet, I don't know how often, just twice a year. They meet twice a year, and they tell them, you know, this is the equipment you need. They go through the shops, and if we need something, they'll say, you know, you really need this for the kids to be up on what's going on. And so that's how we're always, you know, up to speed for whatever the trade is. So.
There's usually a lot of emphasis put on their opinions, like when we apply for grants. That's one of the things they want to see. They want to see it documented that it's come through the advisory board. It aligns with their priorities and their recommendations. We actually are neck deep in about a $1.4 million renovation of our metal fab program. It's all grant funded. And again, it was the advisors on that committee that reached out and advocated for that, and said, you know, these are the things that we need to bring in, and these are the technologies we need to update this program. So we're looking forward to that. We're about halfway through that at this point in time. Yeah.
Cool.
And how about co-ops? Your co-op percentage is what percentage?
About 62% of our senior class.
Okay.
Yeah. And juniors will be eligible at the end of third quarter, which I want to say is the first or the second week in April. I'd have to look at the calendar, but it's coming up fast.
And to go out and kick co-op, you have to maintain certain...
Yeah, you have to have good attendance. You can't have, you know, any major discipline issues. You have to have good, especially as a junior. I believe to go out as a junior, you have to have all Bs or higher to qualify for co-op. It drops down. I think it's C or higher for seniors. So again, we try to make it a little bit more selective for our younger students to have them show the initiative and prove that they're ready to go out and participate in that program.
Okay.
Is that your typical percentage, 62-ish, 65?
It's a little bit lower.
Typically?
I want to say last year, the year
usually
before,
higher.
it was closer to 75%. I don't remember if it was last year or the year before. Not to brag, but we were the number 2 co-op placement statewide last year, and I would say that the other school put their finger on the scale a little bit because they let their juniors go out earlier than we do, but it was neck and neck. It was only a couple of percentage points between the two of them.
What school is that?
Upper Cape Tech. My friend, the superintendent down there, and I have a long-standing.
Boston doesn't exist to me.
Yeah.
Question for my own. What is your capacity, total student capacity?
Based on what the building was built for, or based on what we're cramming in there?
Well, I would say to have an acceptable student-to-teacher ratio and provide all ancillary services, what would be a quote-unquote educated guess as to?
I think maximum that we could handle would be somewhere around 1370.
And that's for your
1375.
occupancy permit for the school?
Yeah, I mean, we technically have the space to make that. That building was built for 1,000 kids, so liberated closets and storage space, and how they turned offices into things that they weren't intended to be. But yes, I think we could easily support 1350. I think 1400 might be a little bit of a push, but somewhere in that range.
And as of your marketing ploy to get more students to go to Shawshene is basically, you're trying to, what's your feel-good number that you would like to see at the school?
I mean,
You're projecting 1282, so.
Yeah, I'd like to see it go up to 1350, which I don't think is outrageous. The sophomore and junior classes are both about 300. I mean, in my mind, we should have 350 freshmen and sophomores. That number should drop to 320, 330 for juniors and seniors. And, you know, again, if we're graduating 325, I'm going to be a very happy camper.
And would your particular goal for that be really recruiting more from Burlington and Bedford?
I mean, again, it's six of one, half dozen of another. One thing that we have started doing the past couple of years is we've been inviting the 8th graders in to do on-campus visits during the school day. And I'll be honest, one of the things that I stand up and address every one of those groups and I say, you know, Shawshene Tech is not for every kid, but we want every student to make an informed decision. We want you to know what this building looks like. We want you to walk around. We want you to see the shops. You know, it's not a classroom with some stuff in it. They're actual shops. And, you know, so the point that I make to the students and the staff that come along with them is be open-minded, take a look at this. If it's something you think you're interested in, we welcome you. Please come back. The other thing I say is we couldn't take all the kids, even if we wanted to. We don't have the capacity for it. So, you know, we want the students that are serious about being there and have a connection to what they want to do in the future.
Okay. From my own memory of history, I won't say for the rest of our community, but from what I remember, when Bill Ricca built their new high school, we received quite an assessment because of the lack of enrollment, because Bill Ricca just went to the brand new high school.
Yeah.
I'm always wary when Shawshene shows up because you have showed up on time, and I appreciate you guys coming today. We've chased numbers in the past, so I'm a little apprehensive. I just wanted to know if you did have a clear plan on growing enrollment, and if you were focusing on those communities that do have 45 and 119 that you project in 2026 to kind of help.
Yes.
You know.
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, we're tracking. I just,
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want any more surprises with
Yeah.
a
No.
giant assessment.
No.
Okay. That's all I had.
But if you notice, though, Bill Ricker has gone back up.
Yeah, they've bounced.
You
Yeah.
know,
Oh, yeah.
They bounced back up, so.
Yeah, and we've seen a steady increase. So like Burlington's applications, this number were way up. We have 81 kids from Burlington that applied this year, which is a
Excellent.
huge bump for them. So we are targeting them, but we're also, you know, trying to build that capacity in
Right.
those communities as well. Yep.
That's all I have.
All right, I just have a comment. Thank you for all the info and your presentation, very thorough, and thanks for keeping the increase under 3%. It's appreciated.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
just FYI, Shawshene is doing a project in Pittsburgh over at the COA. They're taking down a wall to the pool
Excellent.
room over there. To make our seniors comfortable and safe as they play billiards. So thank you for that.
That's great. And again, I'm open to any projects that our sending communities want to send our way. Sometimes they don't fit within the scope of what we can do with high school students, but anything we can do to help out, we're on board with, so.
We are building a house on Florence.
Oh, that's right, that's in Pittsburgh this year too.
Oh,
Yep.
excellent.
Right, and if you go down there, you'll be able to see it. It's
Awesome.
almost done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Town Manager, do you have anything?
Do you have anything?
Do you have anything?
I do not. I might have some transfers next time, but not today.
Today? We got no minutes? And so, Anybody have anything else?
Next
meeting?
We do have one next week, right?
Yes, we do.
Mr. Chairman?
I may not be able to make
Yes.
that one.
I do have one thing. In a previous meeting, you had asked about moving, it was the Delphi expense from the police department over to the IT.
Right.
So there are several line items. Is you want to move all of those line items over to that budget?
Well, it was just a way of kind of consolidating IT costs.
Yeah, when you, after offline, you want to look at this with me and I'll.
Sure, please send it to me.
Okay.
I'd be happy to
All right.
look.
All right, great.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next meeting is next Monday.
Yes.
I may not be able to attend.
What is next Monday for budgets?
I think it's the one we skipped initially, the library.
Yeah.
Oh,
But we did the clerk, but we didn't do some
Yeah,
of
we
the
didn't
other
do all
ones.
the other departments,
Okay,
like community planning.
I remember that.
That's
Yeah.
planning, right?
Yeah.
Nothing outrageous.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned until next Monday.